Thanks for tuning in to Know Wine in No Time. I'm your host Dave, and we're so glad you've chose to take your wine journey along with us. We're back, and today's really a fun episode because there's no greater pleasure than pairing wine with different cheeses. And I'm going to give you 5 simple techniques that will allow you to pair your cheese with your wine like a professional. And the first thing we have is the old adage, and I use this all the time: if it grows together, it goes together. And when we talk about regional cheeses and regional wines, you can call it the divine plan, you can call it Mother Nature, but when a cheese comes from a specific area where grapes are grown naturally, those types of combinations just seem to go better together. And what I have here is the first one let's talk about, and this one I picked a 12-month Manchego cheese. Manchego cheese is made from Manchega sheep in central Spain. And a perfect wine to pair with that, now going on the if it grows together, it goes together, is Contino's Rioja Reserva. What's nice about this is the cheese itself has a fairly strong flavor, and when we pair it with a Rioja Reserva, we have a more muscular wine to stand up to that specific cheese. Now let's move on to tip number 2, and that's that creamy cheeses always pair well with lighter, more acidic wines. And in this case, I chose a Brie cheese for us. So if we think about Brie, Brie is a very creamy cheese that has a little bit of almost a nutty persona to it. And we take it and pair it with something like Chirlans Champagne. Now we have a highly acidic, dry, and bubbly product that works really well with this cheese. So think about eating a piece of Brie. We notice that creaminess across our palate. When we wash that down with a sip of champagne, the bubbles actually encapsulate and cleanse the palate, while the acidity prepares you for another bite of cheese and another sip of wine. When we think about tip number 3, we think about having to pair earthy cheeses with earthy wines. And I stayed with Brie for a moment. So think about Bries that have been, let's say, cave aged, something like a Saint Andre. Those have a little bit of a funky nature to them. They're almost a little bit musty in their persona. So when we think about that, we want to pair that with a wine that also has a more earthy persona. And for that I picked a Santenay from Burgundy, France. So this is 100% Pinot Noir, and it itself is very earthy in how those grapes have presented themselves. And when you pair it with a Saint Andre, then you have a beautiful, perfect pairing. Tip number 4. As cheese starts to get more muscular, the wine that you pair it with has to get more muscular. We want to pair strength with strength. So in this case, I have a 26-month Beemster cheese. So this is a cheese that has been significantly dewatered. In other words, it's a very hard cheese with a kind of salty, very strong, almost nutty type of flavor. And for that, we have to match strength with strength. And in this case, I picked a wine from northern Italy. This is Bersano's Barolo. And in Barolo, we have 100% Nebbiolo grapes that are aged 2 years in oak, then 2 years in the bottle prior to reaching the market. So we've matched strength with strength, and it ensures that the cheese doesn't overwhelm the wine and the wine doesn't overwhelm the cheese. And finally, tip number 5 is that we want to put pungent cheeses with a sweet type of wine. And with this one, we're actually going to do a little demonstration. So in this case, I picked a Stilton blue cheese. So Stilton blue cheese is an English blue cheese that has kind of an interesting persona. So they take this cheese, which starts out very creamy, they poke holes in the cheese, introduce penicillium mold to the cheese, allow it to get exposed to oxygen, which causes those blue or green veins to go throughout the cheese. Well, if you've ever had blue cheese before, you know it's funky, it's pungent, it's full of flavor. one of the world's finest cheeses. Really delicious, but it is very off-putting to some people. So we take and we pair that with something like this wine. This is Terrosoir's Rivesol Ombre. This is a wine that has spent 18 years in a single oxidative oak barrel. So what exactly is this? This is a Vin du Naturel, a sweet wine done in a natural process where we oxidize it in a barrel. So when we think about some of the fortified wines of the world that we've covered in other No Wine in No Time videos, this would be very similar to a tawny port. But this one comes to us from the south of France. Now the reason why I picked this one is it will completely encapsulate and diffuse the blue cheese. So any wine and cheese experience, I always say take a little sip of the wine first, think about what it's telling you, then take a bite of the cheese, then sip the wine again and see how it changes the cheese. So let's go ahead and take a taste. So across the palate, this Rivesol Ombre definitely tastes like somewhere between buttered nuts and a little bit of liquid creme brulee. It really has a sweet, beautiful, silky persona. Now let's go ahead and take a bite of the cheese. So when we take a bite of the Stilton blue cheese, the first thing we're going to notice is those pungent qualities that come through from the cheese. It has a funkiness, it has a pungency, it's very, very strong. Let's go ahead and take another sip of the wine. Now this time, we feel the wine liberating extreme flavors of butterscotch and caramel. It has completely surrounded that blue cheese, taken something that's very pungent and polarizing and reducing it to something velvety smooth and really just an absolutely beautiful combination. So I'm going to go down this line and enjoy some of these cheeses and wines a little bit further, and I ask that you come back next time because soon you'll know wine in no time.